Hello. Well, first things first, I want to let my subscribers in Australia know that I'm thinking about you. And indeed, not just my subscribers, of course, but everyone in Australia. A terrible disaster has hit your country. And I want to say that although I very much appreciate, well, I want to say to everyone else, I appreciate the donations I get after my videos. I'm talking about not the people who are regularly signed up to Subscribestar or PayPal, but just nice people who see a video that they happen to like and want to contribute every so often. If you feel moved to donate to me on this occasion, then send it to an Australian charity instead. My particular sympathies go to those who are working to nurse the animals which have been saved but injured and need help. And if you do that, do let me know. I'm interested. I do hope a few people are sufficiently amused by this little video to consider helping out over there. Okay, to business. This is intended to be a short video. I'm actually in the middle of making one about Turkey. Not the Christmas variety, the country. But I thought I'd take a break because I've been thinking about some of the comments I found underneath my last video. You see, it was about dresses. Well, what was left of them anyway. Dresses worn by the stars and the hopefuls at the 2020 Golden Globes ceremony. Some people watched the video and thought it was fun, and some took me to task for, well, frivolity, I suppose. There were quite a few, though, who said they never look at fashion, but despite themselves enjoyed the video, and they didn't know why. There is a reason for that, by the way, and I'll get into it in a few moments. Some, of course, were heavily critical. There always are some. But I want you to reconsider your position while I point something out to you. A well-known academic who specialises in fashion said something like, I couldn't find the quote, but it was something like, fashion isn't a cause, it's a result. That's not the quote, but it's the nearest I can remember. However, my misquote does contain her meaning, and that was that fashion comes out of society and, well, you can see she didn't use the word pathology because that isn't her angle, but I do. You can see the pathology of a society by looking at what people wear. The academic was talking in terms of fashion. I look at it slightly differently, perhaps a little more philosophically. When you're looking at fashion, you're looking at a mindset. And you can see the same folly and stupidity and venality of humanity in their style as much as in their spoken sentiments. For instance, if I show you this picture, most of you will have a fair idea of the political opinions of these people, won't you? By the way, they were the neighbours of Boris Johnson's girlfriend who reported the row that they'd had in the flat they lived next door to before he became Prime Minister. And no doubt with a lot of glee, judging by the fashion they're wearing. So I maintain that although a short diversion into fashion may appear to be irrelevant, it actually isn't. Now, here I'm going to stretch a point, but only slightly. Consider Words are the dresses of the mind. They can reveal or hide in the same way as fashion does. They can show how you want to be thought of in the same way as fashion does. And they can be as tacky and as dishonest and as ridiculous as any garment thought up by some designer who wants to make an effect without thinking either about logic or utility. I'm going to have a go at Jeremy Corbyn now, but that's just because he exposed himself in Parliament after the killing of the Iranian terrorist boss Qasem Soleimani, in just the same way as those actresses exposed themselves, some actresses exposed themselves at the Golden Globes. Those women were prepared to wear the rubbish lent to them by designers who were thinking about clothes as a means of imposing themselves on people's minds, rather than making their customers attractive. And in Parliament, we're getting, in Corbyn's recent pronouncements, a politician who speaks for effect rather than constructive political decisions. It's the same thing. I admit, people don't die if you turn up to a party in a dress like this. But despite outward appearances, there's actually no deep philosophical difference between that dress, which is a tawdry but probably successful attempt to establish her credentials with a certain sort of person, and with this bit of grandstanding by Jeremy Corbyn, which I'm going to play in a minute, which is a tawdry and probably successful attempt by him to establish his credentials with a certain sort of person. So here, I'll play this now.
The United States' actions have undoubtedly escalated the risk of a dangerous conflict and in an already destabilised region, putting civilians, UK troops and nationals at risk and leaving the Iran nuclear deal in danger of being dead in the water. This government's response is not putting the interests of this country first, but instead seems more interested in prioritising the Prime Minister's relationship with President Trump over the security of the region and of this country. Isn't the truth, Mr. Speaker, that this Prime Minister is unable to stand up to President Trump because he's hitched his wagon to a trade deal with the United States, and that prioritises everything else that he ought to be considering?
Okay, and I have to say that Boris Johnson's responses were equally slippery in their own way, but Johnson managed to do his stuff with far more subtlety and aplomb, avoiding as he did a direct answer to the question of the legality of the American action. So his answer came out more like this. Well, it's certainly more attractive than the previous one, isn't it? Actually, you know what? It rather looks like Harvey Weinstein caught up with her in a bramble patch, doesn't it? Anyway, here's Boris's answer, which skims over the relevant bits in just the same way as that dress, while pretending to reveal.
So what I will say is that the UK will continue to work for de-escalation in the region. I think we're having a great deal of success in bringing together a European response and in bridging the European response with that, of course, of our American friends, and working both with the Iranians and with the Iraqis to dial this thing down. There should be absolutely no doubt. And this is, of course, a leader of the opposition who has famously received £10,000 from Iranian Press TV. He should be in absolutely no doubt that we are determined to guarantee with everything that we can the safety and security of the people of Iraq, whereas he, of course, would disband NATO. And it is this government that will continue to stick up for the people across the Middle East who have suffered at the hands of Qasem Soleimani and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Quds Force that he has led and whose terrorism he has promoted. And I'm very surprised at the end of these exchanges that he has yet to condemn the activities of Qasem Soleimani.
You know, I can't say how legal the killing was. I'm not an expert in international law. I can, though, give you my opinion. And my opinion is that the world's a much better place for the absence of that proxy murderer. And the problem is that when a government, as the government of Iran in this case, gives diplomatic status to what amounts to an attack dog, this is a situation that international law has a lot of trouble defining, because it's completely, well, it's not completely new in history. The British used to use what they called privateers. That is, you know, licensed pirates who were allowed to roam the high seas and harry Spanish ships. And then when they brought the booty back, they gave some of it to the British government. But that, by the way, the Spanish defended themselves against these privateers, so I suppose that could be a precedent for this. The Iranian regime knew that this was a grey area of international law, and they took advantage of it. And we have the same situation in this, where we have an actress turning up at a gala in something that's the shape of a dress. So she's turning up in a dress, but it isn't actually a dress, is it? I shall end with a bit of Corbyn again, just because. Here we are.
Doubt that Soleimani was engaging in terrorist acts? Do you doubt that he was not in Baghdad, as the minister said today, in order to plot assault on the West and on coalition
was
forces?
In Iraq for reasons of contact, I assume, with the Iraqi government. I have no idea what his actual meetings were.
Do you accept that Soleimani was a terrorist, somebody who commissioned terrorist acts against coalition forces from a range of countries?
I'm not here to defend special forces of Iran.
Boris Johnson said at Cabinet today he was a terrorist who commissioned acts of terror against the West, US and coalition forces. Do you agree with that assessment?
It's very odd that Boris Johnson couldn't be bothered to come to Parliament to say that himself.
But Soleimani, terrorist, yes or no?
Soleimani is the head of special forces of Iran. They obviously operate in all kinds of places that you and I would not agree with or want. That is not the point. The point is it's an illegal act that took place, and if we want to end illegal acts by anybody, you don't commit them yourself.
And I'm going to liken that to another sort of fashion. So, I hope you see that the occasional foray into fashion isn't a complete descent into triviality. And those of you who commented that you watched it despite yourselves, you can pat yourselves on the back, because you understood that there's a message behind fashion, even if you didn't realise that before. And so, trigger warning, everyone. I realise that the Oscars are coming up next month, and I intend to have a go at them. So be warned, I will be making another video about dresses. Well, probably. But then, with me, you never know what you're going to get, do you? If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share, because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons, because occasionally they reset. Till next time.